got a goldfinch. A lot of you probably know goldfinch from seeing it about. And then, of course, the last one is a greenfinch. To me, greenfinches are another very beautiful bird. They are birds you can attract into your garden. Of course, also it depends on the location of where you live. Now then, another skull replica I've got is this. It is a 3D printed replica of the skull of a badger. Badgers are native to Britain. They are found in woodlands that are on the borders of farmland, and they're mustelids. They're in the weasel family, and the weasel family are a group of animals well known for punching above their weight and taking on animals many times their own size and being utterly fearless. And of course, as you can see right here, badger's teeth are utterly ferocious, and of course, if I was to get bitten by a badger, well, it would probably shred me, and it would probably take a lot of stitching to fix me up. Yeah, that's why I would never go up against a badger, although they're more afraid of us than we are of them, and they're much more likely to run away as soon as they see us. But if they're frightened, if they are cornered or protecting young, then they can lash out. It's always the rule you've got to remember when you're working with animals. And in this box here is one of my oldest possessions, and it's also one that I cherish. It is... This is the skull of a songbird of some species. I think it might be a finch. My great aunt and uncle gave this to me when I was quite little, so it's one of my most treasured possessions. And this is the bone of a bird of some species. I can tell it's a bird because inside because of the bone structure inside. Bird bones aren't like mammal bones. They're not solid, they're hollow with a honeycomb-like structure which helps them to get airborne. And then of course I also have the tooth of a sheep. And sheep, as many of you know, are herbivores, so it has teeth used for grinding up grass. Of course, that is the box they're kept in. As I said, I've had these for about 20 years, and they're one of the items that I cherish more than any. Of course, next I'm going to show you all is a group of invertebrates, which are animals that have no backbone. And of course, they are, to me, some of the most fascinating creatures on the planet. Scorpions. Now, scorpions are not insects, they are arachnids, in the same family as spiders, harvestmen, ticks and mites. Of course, here is the first one. It's a yellow sand scorpion. And as you can see, pincers are small and thin, tail is big and fat. Now, the rule of thumb with scorpions is you look at the size of the pincers and the tail to see if they're dangerous or not. Now, on this one, I would definitely not take this into my hands because it would probably sting me. And although the venom probably wouldn't kill me, only probably, it would probably land me in hospital for a good while. Now, the other one is a real monster. This is a Asian giant forest scorpion, and of course, as you can see on this one, tail's small and thin, pincers are big and fat, so this one doesn't use venom, it actually uses its pincers. And of course, Whilst with scorpions like this, they use their pincers to kill prey. They're probably good at crushing and mashing up their prey, which can be other scorpions or more than likely crickets and cockroaches. And one thing that also fascinates me about scorpions is that their exoskeleton, which is the skeleton on the outside of their body, glows under UV light, under ultraviolet light, and it is absolutely incredible. But yeah, but also scorpions are very devoted mothers, and if we didn't have these guys around, then we'd be overrun with things like crickets and cockroaches that nobody wants around. Because here are the examples of the two scorpions. On here, the yellow sand scorpion, small thin pincers, big fat tail loaded with venom. Indian giant forest scorpion, tail small and thin, pincers big and fat. So two very different scorpions, and that is basically the rule of thumb with these creatures. And of course it's also only fairly recently that I've taken more of an interest in things like insects. Of course, for many years I wasn't really the biggest fan of insects, but I did have a soft spot for butterflies and beetles, and I actually have some with me right now. This is a Indonesian jeweled beetle, and it is one of the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen. Well, it's actually Central African, but it's one of the most beautiful beetles I've ever seen in my life. Of course, then the second beetles I've got are three frog-legged beetles. That's them right there. Beetles are very fascinating creatures in their own right, and of course, here is another of the beetles, the third beetles I've got. Patagonian dung beetles. Now, I know that to a lot of people, dung beetles don't sound very pleasant, but of course, Charles Darwin, who was the greatest naturalist and biologist who's ever lived, and also who wrote The Origin of Species and The Voyage of the Beagle, that he actually collected beetles throughout his life. He collected many different beetles, and he actually made his own beetle box. And of course, that of all the beetles he collected in Britain during his youth, but also on his travels aboard the HMS Beagle. And of course, one thing that always amazes me is the size difference between these it's a male and a female, and of course they are very fascinating, as I've probably said already, but I've always liked beetles. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for them. And of course, I also have recently taken an interest in a creature that would probably give most people a shiver right down their spine. Centipedes. And of course, centipedes to me are some of the most fascinating creatures because they are arthropods, and of course they were some of the first creatures to evolve on planet Earth. This is one of them. It's a Florida squalopendra, and it may be small, but right at the front of the head here are a pair of legs that have evolved into modified claws, and they're attached to a venom gland. And if I got bitten by one of these, it probably wouldn't kill me. I mean, only probably, but all it would do is make sure that for the next few days there would be nothing in my world apart from pain. And I actually met someone who was actually bitten while handling a squalopendra centipede, and he said it was like having a burning hot needle stuck into his hand, and the pain spread all the way up his arm and made his arm go completely numb and had him laid up in hospital for a week. So that's wider, a lot of naturalists, when they're working with animals like this, will quite often wear garden gloves. Of course, now I'm going to show you the newest addition to my collection, and it is the animal that put the creep in Creepy Crawly. This is Squalopendra giganteum, also known as the giant squalopendra. It's the largest species of centipede found on the planet. It lives in South and Central America, and it can grow to be 35 centimetres long, which is as long as my forearm. And of course, right here at the base of the head, right underneath the antenna, as I mentioned with the previous one, a pair of claws that are modified legs, and they possess a ferocious venom, and of course this venom probably wouldn't kill me, but it would just make sure that for the next 3 or 4 days there would be nothing in my world apart from pain. But what this venom does is it has the ability to take down its prey in seconds. And of course, these giant squalopendras, they do feed on invertebrates like beetles, crickets and cockroaches, but some of them they will even hunt lizards, small mammals like rats and mice, and even venomous snakes. But in a few caves in Venezuela, they've been seen doing something incredible, catching bats, actually hanging from the ceiling to grab them in mid-flight, and this creature's venom is powerful enough to kill a bat in seconds, and it would probably land me in the hospital for a long time. And of course, another part of my collection is this. This is the feather, or the tail feather, from a male pheasant. Pheasants are found in Britain because they aren't actually native to Britain originally. They actually come from southern and southeast Asia, because it's believed they were either brought over by the Romans or the Normans a few thousand years ago. And of course, since then they have been classed as a British bird, but of course there are so many of them around, and they provide prey for things like goshawks, buzzards, golden eagles, white-tailed eagles, peregrines, ravens, all sorts of creatures. And of course, in this box here is a bunch of feathers I have collected over the last year. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, birds have always been a deep passion for me. Of course, these I actually picked up when I was in Wales last November. Getting a bit mixed up here, sorry. These feathers I actually picked up while I was in Wales last April, when I was at the No Man's Land reenactment event, and I was out on a walk around the site one evening, and I saw a lot of these feathers. One's from a duck, one's from a pigeon, and the others are from pheasants. And because there's actually a theory among paleontologists and many scientists today that has been proven about dinosaurs being the ancestors of birds. I mean, because one theory has said that maybe a small group of dinosaurs survived the meteor strike that wiped them out 65 million years ago, and their scales turned into feathers, and they gave rise to the birds we know today. Of course, also another part of my collection is this. In this jar here is genuine wolf hair, and of course this is the feather of a snowy owl. So I got these at the same place I got my emu egg at Gentle Shore Wildlife Centre. Do check out my videos on my trip there. And of course, The next